Now, an inquest has ruled that an Ofsted inspection likely contributed to the death of head teacher Ruth Perry.
Yes, Mrs Perry took her own life in January whilst waiting for the Ofsted report to be published.
Now, her sister, she spoke outside the town hall where the inquest took place yesterday, but I'm just reading now that she has described the response of Ofsted to the coroner's conclusion as woefully inadequate. Ofsted has paused inspections, but the family has demanded change to prevent other families going through similarly traumatic inspections. Let's hear what Ruth Perry's sister had to say.
The inquest into Ruth's death has shown the brutal inhumanity of the system of Ofsted inspections. Ofsted likes to judge people with single-word labels. We could judge the current Ofsted system with our own labels: callous, perverse, inhumane.
Now, Ofsted's Chief Inspector, Amanda Spielman, has apologised to the family and friends of Mrs Perry. We're joined now by maths teacher and broadcaster Bobby Seagull to get his insight into this. Good morning to you, Bobby. Such a terribly, terribly tragic story, this, about Ruth Perry. You know, a much-loved teacher, head teacher, and wife and sister. What is your experience of Ofsted inspections? Are they traumatic? Are they distressing? Because they happen with very little notice, don't they?
And again, when I think about this, I think about what is the purpose of Ofsted. There's two functions. One is to ensure the safeguarding and safety of children. And secondly is to make sure that the education they're receiving is of high quality. And so obviously those ambitions are really important and valuable and needed in our schools. But the reality on the ground as a teacher, I've been in secondary schools now for a decade now, is that when you hear the word Ofsted, it strikes fear into the hearts of teachers, senior leaders, head teachers, and that is something that's wrong. And I think the reason why it's wrong is it's the way in which they issue their judgments, because we know as a school that when they come in, they issue a one-word summary statement. Is it outstanding? Is it good? Is it requires improvement? Inadequate? And even though the school may have many things going good for it, that one-word summary ultimately is how a school is judged by parents, by the community, by local politicians. And that's where things are going wrong. And again, obviously, deepest condolences to Ruth Perry and her family, but she must have felt all immense weight of pressure because I think her school was outstanding for 13 years and she was aware that it was going to be moved to inadequate, which I think potentially would have meant a takeover by another school. So I think Ofsted, we need an education inspectorate, but what they're doing clearly at the moment doesn't work.
I mean, Bobby, you are a fantastic maths teacher, a fantastic broadcaster as well. And even you say, when you hear the word Ofsted inspection in your decades worth of experience in secondary school, it strikes fear into your hearts. Even fantastic teachers who should have nothing to worry about, they still fear that anxiety, they still feel that. What can be done to change that? Is there something within the inspection that needs to change? Should the policy change, or is it about that one word, that pressure that it does come down to that one word?
So I think the one word definitely plays a part. Like if I was making recommendations to Ofsted, I would say actually spend more time on the longer, sort of more formative report. It could even be a paragraph, but replace that one word. But also the other factor is when Ofsted arrives, it almost feels like, you know, when HMRC or the FBI doing like a crack raid, you know, coming and trying to go through the papers. And because it's an unexpected last minute inspection, it means that everyone feels very unprepared. Again, if you're thinking about something that's collaborative and helping schools to actually deliver, you'd want something where Ofsted comes in more regularly, let's say once every term for a short morning or an afternoon. Because currently, they might come in every 5 or 10 years. And there's that irregularity that means that the judgment is just a snapshot of that one particular moment. And it doesn't feel like they're supporting schools to improve. It almost feels as if they're coming just to pass a judgment. And that's where their fear comes from, Ellie and Pip.
And another aspect of this, Bobby, which will not have helped at all, is the fact that Ruth was told to keep everything confidential. She didn't feel that she could actually speak to anybody about what was going on.
Yes, and currently the way Ofsted is set up is that when a head teacher is in meeting with the chief inspector from Ofsted for that school, the chief inspector will say, okay, Ruth, your school's going to be moved down from outstanding to inadequate. But the head teacher of the institution is not allowed to tell the governor, is not allowed to tell other teachers, senior leaders, even their family. They're asked to keep it confidential for maybe up to 30 to 60 days. So all that pressure is on them. So again, a very simple thing Ofsted could do, Pip, to change this is to make sure that head teachers are allowed to tell their immediate members of their family, their senior leadership. Of course, they can't tell the wider school community. But again, putting all that pressure on that one person in that community is probably unfair.
And Bobby, what changes, because the family of Ruth Williams have demanded change, what do teachers want to see? What changes would you like to see being made on the ground? How would you like to feel more supported?
So I think one thing is that Ofsted is not seen as a collaborative organisation. I understand. I used to work in the city for 7 years. When you've got inspectors, when you've got auditors, it's not always going to be comfortable. That's the nature of reality when you get someone external coming in. But at the moment, it feels too adversarial. You get the teaching bodies here, Ofsted are there, standing there. So it feels like a confrontation. But as Ofsted, again, I think partly that comes down, Ellie, to the irregularity of their visits. If it's only every 5 or 10 years, it's always going to feel like an imposition. But if Ofsted and the government genuinely wanted to improve schools, they would come in once a term for a morning or an afternoon. And therefore, oh, it's Ofsted, they're coming in a few weeks, it's fine. But it's that last minute surprise. Again, schools, the head teacher finds out at 3 o'clock. And at 4 o'clock, they have a meeting with staff saying, tomorrow morning, Ofsted are coming in. And that panic ensues. So that feels like it's almost like a punitive measure rather than something that's there to support schools.
OK, Bobby Seagull, maths teacher, broadcaster and friend of the programme, may I add. Very good to see you this morning. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry it's not in better circumstances. Thank you very much. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because both of us are actually daughters of teachers. Both our mums and dads are both teachers. And we both commented this morning in the newsroom, didn't we? We have felt the fear of Ofsted from our parents. I've always felt it kind of rippling through my childhood home when either of my parents had an inspection. So it is something that...
I remember my dad was a bit shocked one day. My dad was a Latin teacher, a classics teacher. And the person who was doing the inspection knew nothing about the subject. Their speciality, I think, was, what did we call it? Domestic science.
Wow.
So I don't know. But I also think perhaps schools and local education authorities have a responsibility as well to prepare staff.
Yeah.
You know, not just
do.
Ofsted, but awful.
Yeah,
awful.
it truly is.
Tragedy,
really
and our
awful.
hearts go out to Ruth Perry's family.
Of course they do.
In response to the coroner's report, Ofsted's Chief Inspector Amanda Spielman said Ruth Perry's death was a tragedy that deeply affected many people. I would like to say, on behalf of Ofsted, sorry to them for the distress that Mrs Perry undoubtedly experienced as a result of our inspection. After her death, we made changes to the way we work to help reduce the pressure felt by school leaders. We will do more, and we are starting that work straight away.